Welcome to today's episode. It's Friday, January 10th, and you're listening to the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. Doc, starring Molly Parker, premiered Tuesday on Fox. It is the first of two medical dramas we're reviewing this week, the other being The Pit. And the good news is if you've seen the trailer for Doc, you don't have to watch the pilot. We're still going to talk about it, but it kind of gives everything away.
The last scene of the episode is the first thing they show in the trailer when she's in the wheelchair and she's being wheeled out of the hospital.
What's the name of this 43-minute episode?
If at first you don't succeed, and the next
second
one
episode is called
Try Again. It reminds me a lot of Breaking Bad because the second episode that series is called Cats in the Bag, and the third episode was called ellipses and the bags in the river.
So you remembered the ... That's what triggered it back, because that's not a common saying. Well, this is. If at first you don't succeed, 43 minutes. But before we talk about it, did this show originally plan to air in the fall? I feel like it got bumped, partially because there's a character that says it's 2024, partially because she is so adamant when she's like, Obama is president right now. And it's supposed to be 8 years previously. And Obama would have been president, but only for weeks left. Like, it would have been kind of tough for her to not mention that Trump was about to be president. And then most importantly, this is Minneapolis. That's where this show takes place.
Right.
The average high in January is 24 degrees Fahrenheit. And there's a scene where Molly Parker's character goes to the parking lot with her lover and is about to have sex in the parking lot with no heater whatsoever. That would be impossible. They would be freezing their butts off. And so that's what led me to think this was probably set to air sometime in September.
Yeah, it was supposed to be August, September when a lot of TV shows come out, but because of the writer's strike, it was bumped to January.
Great. So originally it probably would have been competing against things like Brilliant Minds and St. Denis Medical, Chicago Med, all that jazz. But instead we get a mid-season replacement.
Yep.
And I just want to bring a note about doctor shows in general. Either you have the ensemble cast show, Chicago Med, Code Black, you name it, Grey's Anatomy.
Yep.
Or you get the individual doctor, the exceptional doctor, the doctor with a crutch. And it started with House way back in 2004. You could probably say it started with Doogie Howser even before that.
Also, but House was on Fox in 2004, just like this was.
Was Doogie Howser on Fox? No, I think it was ABC
I think it was
or something.
NBC maybe, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, you have Doctor with something special about him. House, you had something bad about him. He was a narcissist. He was depressed. He had an addiction, and it made for some really cool drama. It was a novel concept. And that has been the last 20 years of television. The Nick, also eccentric doc struggling with an addiction in the year of 1900. You have the autistic super doc and Freddie Highmore in The Good Doctor, the Alzheimer's curing doctor with face blindness based off Oliver Sacks that we saw in Brilliant Minds.
They always are. They're somewhat like Sherlock-esque, where it's like they're able to figure out things that actual doctors never could in a million years, or at least that fast.
The same way in detective series, Psych, Monk, they always are very perceptive. COVID patient zero doctor on a boat. That was Dr. Odyssey with Joshua Jackson. Dissociative identity disorder doc. That was in that Do No Harm show that came out 10 years ago with Lin-Manuel Miranda. You always have to have them have a medical crutch sometimes. In this case, it's amnesia.
I remember with Prodigal Son, I think someone was in jail, but they ended up figuring out the COVID vaccine. Before, in the real world, the COVID vaccine had even been figured out. But I think Michael Sheen's character, he was supposed to be someone who...
You lost me by COVID vaccine was figured out before COVID? Wait, what?
Yeah, so in Prodigal Son, prior to the COVID vaccine in the real world being figured out, they said in the TV series that Michael Sheen had figured out the vaccine for it. The episode that you watched.
I don't remember that episode. I just remember he was a bad guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's the whole point. He was in jail, but he was able to figure out the COVID vaccine in jail.
It sounded like Martin Sclabrelli, because I know he asked to be set free from prison so he could help with the vaccine at the time. Crazy stuff going on. But I also want to point out that Marvel also has the super doctor, because you remember it starts off with him getting into a car accident, unable to use his hand. Doctor Strange. And then suddenly he's still able to perform surgeries, but he doesn't anymore because he's helping Spider-Man. So yeah, the premise of this show, Doc, is pretty simple. When Chief of Internal Medicine Amy Larsen gets into a car accident, bruising her frontal lobe and lodging skull fragments into her squishy noodle brain, she's left with retrograde amnesia, something that I think less than like 20 people get per year. It's incredibly rare, but it forces her to come to terms with who she's become over the last 8 years, a workaholic, no-nonsense, divorced jerk with a dead son and a growing list of enemies. How is she going to bounce back? Well, we don't really get that many answers in the 43-minute pilot. Like I pointed out earlier, it's kind of just the trailer, and it leads to a lot of like, will she get back together with the guy that she's been sleeping with on the side? Or I guess she's not having an affair technically. Will she mend things with her family? Will she find the dude who's replaced her, the new chief, and find him guilty of malpractice? Like, there's a lot of different avenues this thing could take, but I assume it's going to follow what the original show did, which is the Italian version. And you tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was called Doc Nelle Tumani, which I think in English refers to Doc in your hands or in good hands.
So like the Allstate commercial guy.
Yes, but also it's still going. It had its third season earlier this year in 2024. I think it's taken 2 years for each season to be made.
That makes sense. I mean, it's an international series. The hard thing about it is to find it. If you're an English speaker, they do not have dubs. They do not have subtitles. I had to download like this. I think some nice person made subtitles for it, but like they didn't speak English particularly well. So you got the medical jargon in there. But when it comes to like speaking to he and her, they were getting the sexes wrong. And it was kind of funny. And there was a latency, but like for the normal person, I would not expect them, unless they speak Italian, to see the original.
Well, it's weird because it was actually one of the top watched shows in Italy and other countries. It was set in Milan, and it was based off of someone. So Doc is based off the Italian TV series. The Italian TV series is based off of real life.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
Pierdante Piccioni was an Italian doctor who got in a car accident on May 31st, 2013, and lost 12 years of memory due to a lesion in the cerebral cortex. So it's actually different from the 8 years
So he woke up
memory.
thinking it was 2001.
He woke up thinking it was October 25th, 2001. And even Piccioni made a cameo in the Italian TV series.
But it's not like 50 First Dates where he keeps on resetting. He actually was able to do what the doctor is here and kind of still practice medicine, right? And I wonder if in Italy, it's easier to do that than it is here, because I know here you have to have like constant yearly educational seminars that you go to. And for her to have just lost the last 8 years, probably kind of like One Punch Man, the only way to defeat him would be to make him forget all the stuff that he's learned. Right? Because
that's why it reminded me so much of just Terry from season 1 of 24, because she had dissociative amnesia for a couple episodes. But yeah, it's such a popular series that's kind of a Greek adaptation. This was a straight to series order. They didn't even wait for the pilot. They were just like, Molly Parker, popular Italian series, let's do it in 10 episodes.
I would compare it to the Harlan Coben series that we talked about, where the book and the television series, it was about 70% that fell right into place, and it followed the main beats of the storyline. That's kind of how the Italian version and this doc show happens. Obviously, the main character's sex has been switched, but where it differed is where that's the real interesting stuff. I want to wait on that. I do want to talk more about Doc first. I want to talk about Amy and the people she has in her camp versus the people she has against her, because I think that's where the crux of what this show is truly about. It's not about the medical stuff. It's more about whether or not Amy is going to be able to survive, because right now there's a lot of people based on her past behavior who want to take her down. You know,
I mean, even when she is in the hospital, you had the nurses being really mean to her and talking behind her back and like making fun of her for.
But why was that? That was because she would be condescending to them. She was really, really trying to figure out this malpractice suit, which has been geared against her and also this other doctor. And she was pretty sure that this other doctor was the one who screwed up. And she confronts him about that and says, hey, we all mess up sometimes. And if you tell me now, then we can brush this under the rug. We'll get our lawyers involved. He decides not to do that. And that's when she gets into her accident. But at the same time, she was about to get an autopsy report. Had the nurse helped her out, which would have confirmed that she didn't do anything wrong.
Right. So the accident was supposed to, aside from the fact that it was what actually happened to the guy, was supposed to parallel her workaholic trait, because she was checking in on the hospital. She was checking her email, and that's the thing that led her to being hospitalized.
But it wasn't like one of those things where she was overworked, where it was like you could see her falling asleep at the wheel or something. So I guess I don't know how her insurance is going to pay out on that one. But yeah, she's got several people in her camp. Number one is her best friend from med school who also works at the hospital, Dr. Gina. She's the one by her bedside when she wakes up. And it's kind of the first one to realize that she doesn't know what time it is, right? And then there's Dr. Jake, the resident / attending that she's been sleeping with since getting a divorce from her husband.
Did you recognize him? He was one of the main roles in The Watchful Eye. I know that goes back a little ways.
Was he? Oh, so he would have been the cop, and he would have been sleeping with the main character as well. Or he possibly, because it's been a while, he could have been the dad of the daughter who the maid or whatever she was taking care of at that time. And I think she also ends up sleeping with him. So either way, Dr. TJ is this kid, he's a doctor, but he's just joined the medical field. And Amy learns that she's the one who got him into medicine. And so that was a really touching moment in the episode, something I think that worked.
He's supposed to be, I think, the moral character, the one that right. is kind of the underdog that at some point I assume will become an actual doctor or nurse. But he's kind of the one that has to prove himself, I think, right?
Yeah, he's a newbie.
That's what I mean.
He seems like he's pretty confident in himself. He's not like the nurse in St. Dennis Medical, not Matt in St. Dennis Medical. He's not a klutz. Anti-Amy. Now, here's the big crowd. Interim Chief Dr. Miller. This is the guy who she suspected of malpractice before the accident. And in the other doctor show, it's not really a spoiler to say that he 100% is way more evil in that show. The guy catches him stealing, I think, the evidence that shows that he had committed the wrong thing and caused this person to die.
And here, Doc, Richard Miller, that character is played by Scott Wolf, who has played a doctor in like 5 other TV series.
So has Molly Parker, right?
And so has Omar Metwally. There are 3 main characters in this show who have played doctors in movies and TV shows.
This is what Molly Parker's Wikipedia says, because this was interesting to me. I've known her from like a lot of stuff, from Lost in Space to House of Cards, but it says that she garnered critical attention for her portrayal of a necrophiliac medical student in the controversial drama Kissed, 1996. So she started off her career doing this type of thing.
Well, the
necrophilia part, but yeah.
She was just planning on doing indie movies for the rest of her life. That's literally word from word what she said.
What would you say?
Indie films.
Indie films, yes.
Yeah, indie films. And then she got thyroid cancer about a decade ago, so she was kind of connected to the hospital part. And when she read the script, she was really drawn to Amy. I know it's kind of weird to bring up when you're talking about the anti-Amy crowd, but that's why she decided to do the show.
Yeah, no, this is a popular character. I can see her embracing it. I like her as an actress. She reminds me of Vera Farmiga, which is kind of funny because you had the Freddie Highmore connection, and I think they both worked together on some project in the past. But yeah, so the negative anti-Amy camp, besides Chief Dr. Miller, you have Dr. Sonia, who is, you remember Dr. Jake? He's the guy that she was sleeping with.
Right.
I think Dr. Sonia is a bit jealous of that. She also hates how Amy is just her attitude, her bedside manner, her condescension. And so she is out to get Amy as well, even though she's below her in the totem pole. The nurses hate Amy's attitude being lectured to. Dr. Douglas, he doesn't really have a reason to hate Amy, but he's just a dick. He's a prick. He misses the scan note when he's looking for endocarditis, and he wants to call off the scan early. But he's not in her camp. And then finally, her patients don't even like her until the very end of the episode, when it turns out that she ends up being right, kind of like House, where it's like, oh man, he was a dick about it, but yeah, he knew what was up. And she ends up saving a pregnant girl who has the same voice of Emmy Rossum. Like, if you close your eyes, you would think that was who was playing that character. And then Amy's family, I would say, is kind of in the neutral category. They don't like what the mom's become. Obviously, it's just the daughter and the dad who's gotten remarried, and she doesn't know this anymore. But he is the chief of medicine. He's the one in charge, and I think he's kind of like, he's got all these bad people have his ear. So they're like his Iagos, and he's like King Lear, where he has to kind of like phase them out and realize that his ex-wife is actually like still really good at being a doctor.
I know that the first scene of the show it does a backflash, and then 10 minutes in we're kind of caught up, but we see like kind of the car crash and everything. But my question is, in the first episode, I don't really remember, do we get a lot of like back and forth between timelines, like what she was like before?
There are 3 timelines, one of which only differs between a day. It's her at the beginning of the day before the accident, one of her at the end of the day. But we keep going back and forth so we can kind of see the contrast. And then, of course, we get the full backflash to when she's in 2016. She's got the perfect life. She's got 2 kids. They're happy. They're both doctors, her husband and herself. And so they're probably very well off. They're on vacation together. But like as soon as her son passes away the next year, that's what we learn. And this is true of all marriages. It's like it's a very huge weight when there's when a kid passes away, there's like the divorce rate skyrockets to like 80%. And it's not even about the love at that point. It's just like when you look at your significant other, it's very difficult to move on with that. So I understand that. And yeah, we do just deal with those 3 timelines, and it's the same way in the other Doctor show as well.
Okay.
In case you were curious. My other comparisons, though, as far as US comparisons, would be House, Suits, and Greek. All of them have a cutthroatness where like everybody in Greek, there's 2 different sides. There's 2 different Greek systems or frats that are constantly trying to get the better of each other. In Suits, obviously, you have Harvey and his colleague. I don't know the name.
Yeah, I mean, the thing
but
about
they're always
Suits,
like
I remember it was like even if they said one word wrong, that like
there's a
they
pettiness,
were out.
a competitiveness. And just like in House with Cuddy, like there's a friction that's going on all the time. But obviously the most apt comparison is going to be the original series and where it differs.
And just to add a little bit on top, the original series really actually took the book that Perdante Piccioni wrote, which was called -12 Losing My Memory and Regaining It.
It doesn't. Because I can tell you right now, there's a glaring difference that will come into play. I'll save it for the last one. But one thing that kind of frustrates me about this series is it is a medical drama, and we've had so many medical dramas, and there's not enough medical jargon in Doc. While in the Italian version, it's everywhere.
So
even in the subtitles, like I could tell they're constantly talking medicine. It's very entertaining. You kind of want to see how the case develops and what the mystery is. And they just got lazy here, and they decided they even stole the same case. They used the endocarditis thing that they had in the other one, but they like I don't know, simplified it. They rushed it.
It was surface levels, right? Like
right. I mean, the other episode is 50 minutes. This is 43 minutes. They took out. I would assume that was 7 minutes of medicine. It's also a little bit more visceral. You see his scars and the fact that they had to shave his head. I don't think they shaved Molly Parker's head. We just see like a cutscene of her getting the surgery.
A bandage. And all we really see in the car crash scene, it's in slow-mo, but she hits her head on the glass.
That was a hard hit, though.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then the investigation is much more central to the story in the Italian version, which is also cool because it's pushing forward that narrative of like, oh man, now that he's forgotten that he caught the dude who had literally like been stealing evidence so that he wouldn't get in trouble, and now he's going to pin it on him. Like there was just extra drama there. And with Molly's character, I guess she was not even at that stage yet, but she is going to receive an autopsy report, and let's see if she's able to put 2 and 2 together, or if she's just going to get her brain back by the end of the season. Is it going to be like Eli Stone, where they kind of solve things by the end?
Again, the book that the Italian series was based on is called Losing My Memory and Regaining It.
That's
at some
good
point,
indicator right there, isn't it? Yeah. I would say the Italian Doc version is a bigger jerk than what Amy is in this series. Amy, there's a difference in a line where she's talking to her patient and she's being depicted as a jerk, and the patient doesn't like her, doesn't trust her, and she's about to leave with her husband. And he said, and she says, if you leave, you might be dead in a month. And that was supposed to be like, oh my God, what sort of doctor would ever say that? Well, in the Italian series, he straight up says, you're going to be dead in a week. Which a little bit more
upfront.
Yeah, more straightforward in that one. I think I liked the bedside manner, at least a little bit in Molly Parker's performance. He's more of a miracle worker. In his episode, we see him kind of diagnose people just by looking at them. Instantaneously, he's able to tell that there's like a kid who is eating too much broccoli, but the type of broccoli is wrong or something.
That's kind of the genius trait that I feel like too many shows fall into.
Yeah, and they didn't do that here. So that's a good thing for Doc. Instead of 8 years, 2016 to 2024, which is the most current one, it was 2008 to 2020, which I think is more helpful if you're trying to show the difference technologically.
Especially 2020 being such a standout year.
Right. I don't even remember if they talked about COVID while he was there, but they must
I mean, the show came out in February 2020.
That's true. So no.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Also, the first thing he sees is he's like, why do you have so many wrinkles? Well, she didn't see that because it's been less time. Um, the original one you said was 2001 to 2013.
Yeah.
That would have been quite the shocker as well, with smartphones and everything, the way that they came about.
The one thing that I'm confused with about Doc with Amy is that she seemed to be very know-it-all when she went into the MRI machine and they were testing her on who the president was, and also.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else with that, because you were saying that she's flippant, and it's like, if this 8 years was supposed to have changed her so much from being like this family woman who like was very outgoing and friendly with everybody, but like as soon as she got in the MRI machine, she's kind of being like sarcastic, and you're just getting the regular Amy, then how is she even that different than who she was 10 minutes before the accident? But what you're actually asking is, what
How
exactly?
How would she not be able to put together that
it's been that amount of time?
Yeah,
she's smart enough, I guess, just for the extra drama. One of the things that I liked about the Italian series is it shows them giving back his phone and him being like a little surprised that it doesn't have buttons on it, because 2008, like, he would have been aware that phones exist, like iPhones,
right,
but he wouldn't have had one.
That was right when the iPhone came out.
It was about a year in, and no one, so it would be quite the shock. But that would be the first thing I'd want if I was in a coma waking up, is kind of, it'd be the only way I'd have to talk to myself almost from the past, figure out what I was into, reading about, just looking up like what books I was reading. I don't know, interesting stuff. And so they gave him that scene. They didn't do that in this one. But the biggest change, I think, and the one that I prefer what they did in Doc, because they just followed the route of the actual guy, giving him a car accident. That's not what happens in the Italian version. In the Italian version, this case that he's up against, the malpractice suit, the dad of the kid who died goes into the hospital, waits for him, and he's being sarcastic with that guy too, because he's just a jerk at this point. He's lost his son. We haven't really talked about the lost son, but that's one of the guiding factors of why the character has become so calloused in both versions. And so the guy pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head, and that is how he ends up getting the brain injury, as opposed to the car accident, which I find very interesting. You remember Sam? What was it called? Good Sam, right?
Yeah.
And then also the House episode. I think both of those characters get shot. House gets shot in the head. The other guy might have just been shot in the chest.
House gets shot in the neck.
No. He might have been shot in the neck, but he also like has some sort of like fantasy coma thing that he goes under, and he also tries to change for the better because of it. So it is funny how like there's a lot of doctors getting shot shows.
But just going back, you're saying that the Doc show ended up actually getting what happened right. Yeah. And then this ended up with him being able to survive getting shot in the head.
Yeah. But I mean, like, he didn't survive it with no repercussions. He was out of medicine. They showed us a little bit into the future. Like, he was found to have retrograde amnesia. They said only 16 people have what you have in the US, or sorry, not in the US, in the world. But it's not until like months later, when his hair has grown back and they see that he's still able to diagnose people, where they're like, let's give this guy a shot. Well, in the Amy version, they kind of speed that up, and they're like, they don't really ever fire her. They're just like, when she's ready to get back to work, we're going to let her get back to work. That's a little strange. I think that plausibly, maybe in episode 2, they'll solve this by giving a few months in between and show her, like, I don't know, start playing Animal Farm or whatever.
The way in which they shot it, she said it was so out of order, Molly Parker, that when she went back to her trailer, she had a map, and it was mapped out in chronological order so she could actually follow it.
That's cool. So, I guess. So we've seen all these crazy doctor types. The only one I'm waiting for, the one I want to see, is Ratatouille Doc.
Ratatouille Doc,
where it's not actually
a rat.
No, it doesn't have to actually be a rat, but something that's helping the doctor be, like in Suits, where he passes the bar but actually didn't go through the education of it.
Right.
Something like that, where like the doctor uses some form of technology to help them and no one realizes except for them. They're like cheating, but still able to perform.
Overall, what would you give this show?
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10 passes.
So like the pilot does not require full attention. It feels like it's a state-of-the-art hospital in Minneapolis. There's the glitz and it's shiny, but There's not a lot of doctoring going on in the doctor scenes, so it's very low effort when it comes to that. But the drama does captivate me when it comes to so many people, the nurses, the patients, the person who's replaced her, the random resident girl, Sonia, like they all want to see her get fired, and she's supposed to be this genius doctor. You would think that she would have more people sticking up for her. And so I did get a little angry on her behalf and realized then and there, like, that's the show being successful if it's able to put me into it, and I'm not just like completely phased out the entire time, you know?
I thought that the show was boring. I would have given it something like a 4 out of 10, but
You didn't want to see somebody get comeuppance when they started like trying to fire her, and then at the end of the episode they were just like, oh, I guess she was right.
It like you were kind of saying with the Italian series, they probably kind of dove into the medical side, and with this it just felt like that wasn't even part of it. The drama was the main reason you watched it, and like you said, there's a dime a dozen when it comes to these doctor shows. It has a 6.9 on IMDb, just a little over 150 reviews, so you can't really judge it there. But in terms of critical reception, it's got negative reviews. 29% on Rotten Tomatoes. Variety gave it a positive review, called the show refreshing, and praised Molly Parker's performance. Molly Parker's performance has been unanimously praised. But The Hollywood Reporter wrote, not quite as bland as its title, but close. And then USA Today wrote, not long into watching Fox's new amnesia drama, Doc, I had a desperate desire to turn the TV off, awarding the show 1.5 stars out of 4.
I think most of that comes from, if you've seen the trailer, you're just watching the trailer in slow version. It's like bad movies when they ruin them in the trailer, and you get there and you're like, you have to wait an hour 40 in before you're like, okay, now surprise me, you know, because you've seen it all.
Yeah. I have a game to close this out.
Great. Yeah, let's close it out.
One lie. This is all about doc shows. So the first one is House series was originally called Chasing Zebras, and Hugh Laurie didn't know that he would be playing the main character. That's one. And the second one,
of course, Hugh Laurie didn't know he was. They were trying to cast younger.
The second one is the series Code Black, which aired in 2013, was based on a documentary of the same name. The third one is Doc shared the same backdrop as Good Sam, and then the last one is New Hampshire.
The same backdrop. What do you mean by backdrop?
Backdrop in terms of like exterior shots.
Was that taking place in Minnesota? In Minneapolis? Good Sam?
Well, yeah,
you know, okay.
Great. Yeah. And then the last one is New Amsterdam consulted over 50 doctors to ensure the medical scenarios were real.
The New Amsterdam one sounds right. Chasing Zebras makes it sound like it would have been one of those articles where it's talking about a medical condition that they want to like extend upon and like be like, okay, so this, I don't know. That one sort of rings true as well. They all sort of ring true. Third one?
Doc shared the same backdrop as Good Sam.
I mean, that one's too boring to be false. I'll go with the one that sounds too boring to be false because, yeah, I'm just curious. What's the real answer?
Okay, well, it was actually New Amsterdam consulting over 50 doctors to ensure the
medical scenarios were true. I get to cut out the part where I say that sounds true.
The thing is, Hugh Laurie, he joins Jimmy Tatro because Jimmy Tatro didn't know in American Vandal that he was going to be the main character either, so they both have that in common.
Oh, so that's what you mean by that. I thought you meant... So, wait, what? He didn't know he was going to be the main character?
Yeah, and it was originally called Chasing Zebras.
So when he tried out for it, it was called Chasing Zebras.
Yes.
It wasn't called House, and he was trying out for a character called Gregory House, and he wasn't able to put 2 and 2 together. Like he was... No, yeah, that would be breakdown.
And then, yeah, Doc shared the same background shots as Good Sam because both were filmed in Ontario.
Yes, of course. That it?
Yeah, I said to close it out.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.